and gentlemen, uh, Mr. Ankit Gupta, Mr. Pankaj Panchuri, Mr. Sandeep Gupta ji, Shri Satish Mana ji, our chief guest, speakers, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all for the CII virtual conference on business complexity. As we all know, the COVID-19 presents a serious threat to the people, to the business economy across the world. Business processes, functions, including finance, supply chain, procurement, HR, marketing, sales, and specific services such as health, insurance, and banking are being severely disrupted. Today's organizations are faced with multiple challenges as they continue to navigate the impact of COVID 19. Leaders have sought to stabilize revenue and take care of customers to reshape their business to align with the evolving demand and find new growth pathways. Leaders are rapidly turning their attention to the next, a period of unpredictable and possibly muted economy recovery, which will raise new competitive threats and opportunity at great speed. What follows will not be a return to pre COVID business practices, but most likely a new era defined by the fast challenging shift in cultural norms, values, and behaviors, such as increased demand for responsible business practices and renewed brand purpose. The key to business strategy coming out of this crisis is to be understand how the crisis escalate in the first place. COVID-19 has changed economies, social system, consumer behavior, what customers value and demand. And now to ensure business continuity, having an emergency scenario is essential. So in the current situation, it is vital to react as fast as possible in order to mitigate impacts and other risks and to prepare the organization for the future development of the COVID-19 pandemic. So here are the few points organization can look at to formulate a core business strategy and ensure business continuity. First one is to establish a resilient culture. When I say resilient culture means in a highly volatile world, being dedicated, calm, and compassionate in all situations should be actively encouraged. Organization should continue to execute work in a collaborative manner with the critical knowledge workers and also looking into the digital capability. Success demands depends on proactively addressing and managing critical situations through applying innovative solutions. Identity opportunities to adapt and reshape priorities and develop new business models to create an involved working environment. The other one is the create broader ecosystem based on social collaboration, which means that we move beyond employee workspace to broader ecosystem that employee can access, such as healthcare or childcare. Consider how all these environments can be woven into new forms of collaboration with the improved sense of corporate social responsibility. How execute, think, and plan for employee expenses is likely to change to include home office, childcare support, and so on. An organization workplace could be include niche, skilled, flexible, and part-time workers who form part of a broader ecosystem. The other one is the employee agile. The what we say is agile means the best combination of working from home and the office, depending on the nature and type of work, and relevant skills required can be enabled by technology, data security, and cloud computing. Then we are looking into the uh, build a human plus a machine workplace. We welcome Mr. Satish Mahanaji, who has just joined us. Thank you, Satish ji, for taking your time and be part of this conference. We really appreciate, you being, depending on, we all knows the current situation. So thank you so much for joining us. Uh, what we were talking about is the business complexity and the scenario which is there, and I was just sharing the some of the points which organization should take care of in future, considering the current environment. And when I said they build a human plus machine workforce, I think it's all about building the new technology, new skills with the current situation where we need to create a human plus machine workforce, and so that the people can work really depending upon the current situation. We also have to look into the distributed global service model. When I say distributed global service model means that use a mixture of service models to de-risk the organization in a volatile world. The distributed global services mean that high performances can be delivered anytime, anywhere, monitor and distribute work across the network in a real time using a command center for a virtual workforce. So that's important because I think the current scenario is totally different than what we used to do earlier. So businesses across the world have rapidly adapted to the pandemic. Those who think and hope things will basically go back to the way they were, I think we need to stop that. They won't. So it's better to accept the reality that the future is not what it used to be and start to rethink how to make it work. Hope and optimism can be a hammering when times are hard, and to escalate the road to recovery, leaders needs to instill insight both of purpose and optimism, and to make the case that even an uncertain future with efforts be a better one. These are some of the thoughts which I thought I'll share to start with, and we would like to listen to our speakers, and we would like to listen to Satish ji. Satish ji, please, we would like to hear your thoughts and your reviews in the current scenario. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, let me introduce. There are some people who are new in this, but let me introduce you also, sir, as a part of the process. Being a deputy leader of Bharatiya Janata Party in the 16th Vidhan Sabha of Uttar Pradesh, and you took oath for the cabinet minister in the UP government on 19th March 2017. Uh, Last seven terms, you are there in the MLAs, from 91, 93, 96, 2002, 2007, 12, and 17, and currently responsible represent Maharajpur constituency of Kanpur. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Please.
Thank you. Sandeep, I have to address, or there is somebody? I'm sorry, I joined late. It's my
No
fault. I
problem,
was
sir.
in a meeting, important meeting. I'm sorry, I'm late.
No
So
problem,
now
sir.
it's over to me. What do you
Yeah,
say,
we want.
Mr. Sikar Rajesh ji?
Yeah, please, sir. Please go ahead, sir. We would love to listen to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I would like to thank everybody, especially CII, for inviting me on this webinar. I have been fortunate enough to join many meetings of CII, and it is strong relationship between CII and UP Industrial Department. Thank you very much, all of you. Rajesh ji, unfortunately I was fixed up with some important meeting. I am late for 10 minutes now. I would like to tell that after this pandemic, COVID-19, there will be a new normal in the society. Sometimes we will have to think on positive directions also. I agree with what you are saying that at this moment, it is not so easy to revive immediately from this pandemic. But we can see across the world also there is problem. So we have to face it strongly and we have to come out of it. We have to think in this manner. As far as industries are concerned, I agree for the last 2 months, industries were shut down. Now, at this moment, when Honorable Prime Minister, he is also more worried about the economic situations. The economy without the industry cannot revive. So they have come up with some 20 lakh crore package. It is a different thing. If it has to be discussed, it will take whole time for each point and each sector to be discussed separately. But as far as UP government is concerned, we are more concerned about the industries now. We have thought in three different sections, you can say that. One is to handhold the current industry in Uttar Pradesh in this phase. That is more important because they have been facing they will face at this time some labor crisis, financial crisis is also there. They were asked to pay the labor's salary for first month, simultaneous for the second month also. Now there are some different orders by the courts also, Honorable Supreme Court and by the High Courts also, how it has to be tackled now. It can be paid in phases also, two, three, four. We can divide that. That is one thing. So it is more important that the survival of the existing industry is most important at this time. Simultaneously, we are second part. We are thinking that the industries which were in pipeline, as you know, that we had organized a uh, investor summit in 2018. After that, we had two groundbreaking ceremonies also. So out of that two groundbreaking ceremonies, out of them, 50% of them are commercial productions, and rest of them are in process of their completion of their industries now. So we would like my officers, they are in personal contact with each of them, what concerns they have, what suggestions they have, what problems they have, and we will try to address them individually at any point of time. All the industry department, all the departments, those who are directly related to industry department, they have been asked to expedite and have personal contact with all those industries. This is the second part. And third part will be what we can get new out of those industries which may shift from China. It is a long way, but we have to start some other. We, as you know, that you are also there to help us in this way, and simultaneously some other knowledge partners are also there. We are working into it. We may find some industries, those who can come to India, but I think we have been importing many things from China. So how can CIA and industrial associations help us to think over whatever we have been importing, how we can produce that in our own country? That is also more important. Sometimes we say that we get some industries, those are shifting from China. Sometimes I think that what we import from China, how we can produce that. That is one of the important point where we can look into. So that is important. So these are the three different, simultaneously, they have to go all together. We just can't number them once, one, two, and three, but they have to go together. So this is more important point. And as far as hand holding of the industry is concerned, as you know that we have withdrawn this labor laws for 1,000 days, next 1,000 days. So that does not mean that labor is not being protected. Sometimes when labor associations come and some other people come, they say that you are not protecting the laborers, you are talking only for the industries now. So on this aspect, I said that industries, when they progress, when they earn something out of it, then obviously they have to share to the laborers in way of incentives, in way of bonus and other things. But at this time, it is not the progress of the industries at this moment, especially. But I think we will come back to the same point where we have been, and we may progress further also because it is in human nature. You just can't change human nature. Sometimes when there is some problem, we are in a sad mode, you can say that. But obviously, being human, we get out of it and we want to move forward. And one day it will come. It may take some time. I agree with you that it may take some time. But I would like to confidently say that we have a very good future ahead also, because once if we think we don't have to do anything, then it won't work. So that is more important. What I want to say is, so we have labor laws I was talking about. So I ask the labor unions also, if industry will survive, then only laborers will get job. So survival of the industry at this point, especially MSME, the package which has been announced by Honorable Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, for that 3 lakh crore rupees loan without the guarantee. And you must all have gone through it, and you must be knowing that also. And simultaneously, in this defense sector and in other some agriculture sector, every a good package has been announced. You have to look for that also. So a relationship between them. I was speaking to many industrial authorities here in Uttar Pradesh from different districts. So I feel happy to say that industries were concerned about their problems. Simultaneously, they were more concerned about the labors also. It is not that the bond of relationship between the labor and industries that cannot break out at any point. So they were more concerned about the laborers also. So laborers also have to think, and simultaneously the industry also have to think about this thing. So this is more important. Another thing, there's our policy, industrial development policy in 2017 we had come up. We are reviewing that also from different sectorial policies. Also, we are reviewing as you know that we had private industrial park policy in the Purvanchal and Bundelkhand area. That limit was 100 acres, and in the central UP and the western part, it was 150 acres for the private industrial park. Now we are thinking to cut short that, and we can bit of small industrial parks. For small industrial parks in this central and western UP, we have reduced from 150 acres to 30 acres at this time, and Purvanchal and Bundelkhand from 100 acres to 20 acres. Simultaneously, we are thinking much about the incentives at this time. We are reimbursing SGST part of the industries, what they have invested in our policy 2017. But we may think for some capital subsidy also. So, as far as government is concerned, we are more interested that the revival, the survival, the revival, and the progress of industry is more important. And our honorable chief minister, he is also concerned, as you must be looking to the news, to the newspapers also, and news media also, that he is more interested about the labors and the industry. Both things they have to go together. There are, I would like to request you if there are some suggestions from your end, there are some queries for your end. I am there to address it. Our officers, they are always there to help you. And you know that after the second groundbreaking ceremony, we had many meetings, 3 or 4 meetings, where we had called all the industries and we personally listened to it and tried to resolve at the table only, whatever it was possible at that time. So we will still continue to do it, and we are always there for the industries to help them. And when I, being the industry minister, I think uh, I will be minister only when industries are there, if industries are progressing. If industries are not progressing, what is the sense of being at any post? So for me, it is more important that whatever concerns are there, whatever suggestions are there, whatever problems are there, industries, we can look into it. We'll address it definitely, and we will. I would like finally like to say that we will definitely think on a positive mode. That is more important. Sometimes governments, they are on if in a dilemma, or they are on a fix which they have to think. But I would like to assure you that we will think on a positive mode, always with the industries. If there are some questions as per your webinar you have planned out, I'll be ready to answer. If I can get some written suggestions also, so that can also be taken with the Honorable CM, and if necessarily required, those changes and those suggestions can, if they are required, they can go to the cabinet also. I would like to request you if you can some written suggestions also and your concerns also. I would welcome all of you. Thank you, Mr. Sikar.
Thank you, Satiji. Thank you so much for your assurance of looking positively into the activities of the MSME. And I think this is one of the best thing you have said about the survival and revival. I mean, we all know that for the last 2 months you are practically working every day with the industry and with the people to make sure that whatever problems we are facing, it has been resolved. So thank you so much for that also, sir. But coming back to your point that, sir, we are looking into the demand of the in MSME in terms of the revival, and we'll come back to you because we have just gone through the announcement of the finance minister, and I think we are looking into the best of the best possibility of coming back to you with some suggestions so that state government can also look into those suggestions. And you rightly said about looking into the SGST part and some other uh, you know corrective actions which states can take so that it can help the MSME at the state level also. So I think that's very important, sir. And so we are working on that. Hopefully by next week we'll come back to you on that request also. Look into that request, and that will definitely help the industry here. Especially, we know also the importance of the migrant workers. We also understand the balance between the government funds and the government support vis-a-vis industry support required to balance out between the industry and the workers. So it's in interest of everybody. If the industry can grow, it will definitely help the migrant workers also, for the growth. And as far as China is concerned, I think you are rightly said, the industries are looking into the possibility of manufacturing or other things which have been started manufacturing in India. As far as the supply and demand is concerned, I think Indian industry has matched the demand of the COVID-19 as quickly as possible. I think this is one of the best compliments which is being supported by the government. and supported by the industry, even during the lockdown. So I think the intention is there, the intent is also there. The I think the industry are also gearing up, preparing ourselves. How do we handle such demands? During the crisis. So I think there are a lot of things which are very positive as far as the industries are concerned, and definitely the migrant labor issue is definitely there, but I think we need to balance it out, and I think government did the right step of bringing 33% to start with, and see the current situation over a period of time, and then increase the capacity to maybe 70% or 100% over a period of time. I think that's one of the best steps which government has took at the current crisis also. G1B or Jan B or G1B. So I think it's important that we all agree on that, and we'll definitely would come back to you, sir, when as and when the industry needs some support. And again, thank you so much for being joining us.
I would like to address one thing. As you said that the government has said that you can work with 33% of the workforce. It is not that. You can work on full force also. You can employ whole employees over there. It is for those offices there. We have to get 33% of the people to come in the office. Otherwise, there are some industries, if they are having, for example, 10 laborers, so it is not possible for them to work with the three laborers because it won't work out. So the government has decided whatever your workforce you require for the industry to work, you are at liberty, and you whatever you want, you can do that. There is no binding on that, whether you have to work with 33% or 80% or something like that. I just wanted to clear it.
Thank you so much. So we definitely understand. I was only saying from the red zone point of view, the containment zone. The rest, green
Containment
and
zone are not allowed at any point. Containment zone, except of containment zone, everything is allowed.
yes, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the clarification. So that's a good piece. So that's what I'm saying, that you guys and you people are always supportive in terms of the industry as far as the industry is concerned. And I think the survival and revival piece, the industry is definitely looking into that for the time being. And whatever support required, as I said, the we are consolidating that input from various industry, and we'll come back to you, sir, by, let's say, by next week. And thank you, sir. Thank you for being part of it. And we also have other many prominent speakers. Mr. Pankaj Panchuri has just joined just now. We also have Ankit Gupta ji next. So feel free to be as and when you feel you will be. You can join us for this. Thank you, sir. So our next speaker is Mr. Pankaj Panchuri. He is the founder and editor-in-chief of GoNewsIndia.com. Mr. Pankaj Panchuri is a print and broadcast journalist with more than 3 decades of editorial and management experience in print and electronics media across 3 continents. He has worked in Delhi, London, Boston, Hong Kong with leading news organizations such as NDTV, BBC, Public Radio International, India Today magazine. Uh, in March 2017, he launched India's first app-based TV news channel, Go News. The app Go News integrates the latest global internet and broadcast technology to provide video news on mobile handsets. His company, Cloudburst Media Private Limited, is also working on innovation in the field of digital broadcasting for Indian market conditions. Of course, has won many international and national journalism awards. Please, uh, please
थैंक यू
welcome
थैंक यू
Mr. Pankaj.
नमस्कार आप सभी लोगों को, और आप सभी लोगों को स्वस्थ जीवन की मनोकामना, और बहुत ही this is very honor for us to speak from Noida, which also happens to be my home state. I'm from UP, मथुरा जिले का रहने वाला हूँ. और we have been working, we are from essential services, and as media company, we've been working all along last time of the lockdown, and we have a lot of problems which are not to be told here. But the thing is that at 10% of our force being allowed, we work in a facility here which has 6,000 people, and at one point of time we were only 6 people working in that building. So you can imagine, and the kind of hardships we have gone through. Main thing I'd like to say to everyone here is that we have to, with survival and revival, we have to also be very careful about opening up now. because the virus has not gone anywhere, and virus is still there, and we have to be very careful about that. That's one thing. The security and safety of our staff, of the labor force, of the people around us, keep that in mind, that that's the uppermost thing. Because if one case comes uh, in your industry or in the office building you are working in, it would be, for the government, it would be imperative to close that down and put it under lockdown. So we have to keep that also in mind. So that is very important and uppermost in our mind. Last 55 days we have worked here. Our office has been open and working. Now coming to the business part of where the government can help us and all that. That at these times, you can imagine that working as an essential service for under the lockdown, your outgoes have gone too much, because you have to take a lot of precautions for that. And your say per capita cost of people working on the streets, like people had to be given taxis and cars just to move around in Delhi, then come to office. We stopped the office, only 10% people were coming, so that has gone up. Meanwhile, if you look at the pipeline, and here I'd like to draw the attention of the minister and all my colleagues at CII, that the pipeline has been stopped. Like all the events around which we work as a media organization, universities are closed, NGOs are closed, all the functions are stopped, and all the work which was underway, like we had work in Madhya Pradesh, that's all cut off totally. We can't go have meetings and all that. So that has to be kept in mind, that we have to open these pipelines. So, unlike we have so much stuff in pipeline, but we can't get that money because we can't deliver that goods, and those goods can be delivered. Goods meaning services as a media organization, only when those facilities open. अब आपको मालूम होगा यहाँ पर ऑटो एक्सपो हुआ था इतना बड़ा, that had to be cancelled. We were part of that auto expo. Auto expo बंद हो गया. So all those orders have been frozen. So the immediate demand, I think, as a business person, I'm a journalist by profession. I'm very new to business, unlike all of you. आप सब लोग business जानते हैं कैसे चलता है, मुझे मालूम नहीं है इतना. लेकिन हमारे all the orders we had in the pipeline, they're all stopped, but the outgoes are continuing. We are paying rent, we are paying the subscriptions we had to actually give up one subscription for our video stream, because they said that we will stop your video feeds. तो मैंने कहा ठीक है, अब कोई बात नहीं, we ask people to keep doing that. So those, your outgoes are continuing, your income is totally stopped. So that unless there is an immediate injection of cash in terms of the loan which the government has very fortunately advised, I went to my bank, and which is HDFC Bank, which is a private bank, and they said that until now we have had no clarity on how those guarantee-free, collateral-free loans would be disbursed. Then I went to another private bank, Kotak Bank. They say we also have the same. State Bank of India, I thought, we can go to the public sector bank. There's no clarity so far that how we are going to, on which basis we are going to give you these loans. Will it be against what is in the pipeline, the orders you have, or will it be against our last year's turnover, expenditure and income? How it will be calculated, he said, we don't know so far. So number one, that clarity is needed very much. uh, uh, Number two, movement for us as essential service providers was okay. Initially we had problems, we got passes made. The administration, I must say that the district administration of Noida was very prompt, and it took us about a week, but they said that they had 10,000 applications, so they had to do that. That was very good. But I think that the government should have, in the money they have announced from the center and from the state also, if the state has can, from the help of the center, which money has been announced for the states, has a urgent fund to immediately give some help through banks or something, to companies like us. We are a startup. Our break even is also not reached yet. So startups are going to die down. These are the people who are young. They are the people who are entrepreneurs. They are the people who are tomorrow's Ambanis and Adanis. But they are all strapped and they need a immediate injection of cash so they can continue their operations. So that was one big thing I wanted to say. The second thing, as far as the global situation is concerned, we all know that internationally, if people are interested in investing in India, I've had some experience on that. We are talking to two firms. One is US based, one is Singapore based for equity dilutions and foreign investments. They are also not very clear of where things are going. So there has to be an outreach. I read in the papers today that in Uttar Pradesh, at least, some people from China have decided to shift base to Uttar Pradesh specifically, which is a very welcome move by the government. But the clarity has to be there. And if the government can underwrite or give assurance to foreign investors that the government would handhold while they are bringing in this FDI in a certain company, that will help us a lot. I talked to a Singapore-based company yesterday. They were very happy that with our product, they were very happy that you have a very good vision, and what you are going to do is totally it's going to change the face of news. Because the idea of our companies, I'll just say in two words, the idea in the company of the company is basically to provide television news on handheld phones, so people can access news anywhere they are. You don't have to sit in front of television. So that was the idea, and so we have. But basically, they said your product is absolutely fine, but there are these uncertainties that your revenue stream will be open and how long it will take. So if the government can give that kind of assurance to investors, I mean, I can get investment tomorrow just for this one thing, because both the investors, one US-based company and one Singapore-based company, they both said that we are not clear on that. So from services side, I don't have much experience of manufacturing side. From services side, I think two things are important. Number one, that there has to be an immediate cash inflow, part of monthly outgoes or yearly, or whatever the government can decide on that. That's one. And number two, for the future, for a very long term, that the government can step in to assure some sort of assurity through public sector banks or through the government. The treasury can't do it, but the government can give assurance to future investors. It would be very useful, and we will be saving hundreds of startups which are in the area where I work, which is Noida and Greater Noida. So that's all my submission is, and I thank you all of you again for inviting me. This is being watched on our channels, and there are now hundreds of people I can see who are watching this right now. So that's our service, and we are not charging anything for this.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you so much. But as as you rightly said, this is not the time for the people to really. I mean, these are the change. I mean, tough time. I mean, trust me, Pankaj. This is true for every MSME. This is true for every employee, and this is not something to link with one. Yes, I mean, there's a crisis. We all understand, and I was sharing some of my inputs also to the team and to the people out there. Government is also, if you see the India, the tax collection to the GDP, India has the lowest tax collection to the GDP ratio, and that is one of the major reasons for Indian government not to serve during the time of crisis. So that's one of the root cause analysis. If you really go down to the root cause analysis, that why government cannot go beyond a certain value, this is one of the root cause analysis. So I think we are all aware of the fundamentals. It's time for all of us to collaborate. It's time for all of us to work together, find a balance approach, find a balance path, which is fruitful for the government, for the industries, for the workers, And that's what we probably need to find out. And at time is changing. So when I said everybody is moving away from the normal routine way of working through the digital media or digital platform, so I think the future is also bright. It's a question of just the initial hiccups, or I would say the trust required to start that. And after that, it's all about moving into the that direction. So I think yes, we all understand the current situation, the current crisis, but I'm quite hopeful that we'll move out of this crisis very soon, and all of us will have to work in that direction. Yeah, and thanks again, once again, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Satish ji was there already. Mana ji has already listened to your thoughts, and these thoughts are already there. So they have come across the first step of bringing the banks into the giving credit. Now, what's the next step in terms of whether collateral, kind of collateral? I'm sure government will come out with the best intelligent way of finding that solution also, and that's our, positive feelings also, So again, yeah, thank you so much. And our next, I would like to, request Ankit ji to for the closing. Is the chairman of CII UP State Council and also the director of the Alpha Private Limited. He did his BTech from IIT Roorkee and Master from University of California, Berkeley. He's also the chairman of CI, as I said, UP, and currently looking after the marketing and business development in Dayal Group. And Dayal Group is a 40 years old diversified agri-business group with operations in fertilizers, feed and seed. Established in 1979, the group operates in the field of micronutrient fertilizers, seeds, and animal feeds. The AL Group is focused on bringing the latest agriculture products and techniques to enhance the productivity and output of Indian farmers. Welcome, Ankit.
Uh, thank you, Rajeshji. Thank you for that introduction. But meanwhile, do we have some Q&A? Do we want to do some Q&A? I think we have the minister sir is ready.
So, Ankit, what we said was, and what we thought is that we will take input from every participants and
Okay,
consolidate.
fair enough.
Yeah, and send it, because this is not the forum where everybody then that will start that will be So
Sure.
we will take the input. Don't worry. Thank you, Ankit. Thank you.
Thank you. So, a very good morning to everyone. It's an honor for me to propose this formal vote of thanks. And first of all, let me welcome and thank the Honorable Minister Sir, Shri Satish Manaji, Cabinet Minister for Industrial Development. Thank you, sir, for being here. Your presence means a lot to the industry members, and it's a big encouragement. Thank you to Mr. Rajesh Sikka, Chairman CI Western UP and Managing Director Metaplex, Mr. Pankaj Pachori, Founder and Editor-in-Chief Go News India. Ladies and gentlemen, so today we are doing this conference on business complexity in today's scenario. So I believe nothing could have been more apt and suitable given the tough times we are going through. So we all know that the lockdown 4 has now stretched to beyond these 50, 55 odd days. And even the future is very uncertain. I mean, nobody could have predicted this. And I know nobody can do anything except for taking precautions, maintaining social distancing in their workplace, in their homes, in public areas. But more and more, what we are seeing that this will be the new normal going forward. We have to learn to live by these new set of rules. And we all know that the next 6 to 12 months would be very uncertain. And we have to build our resilience, both as an individual and as a business, to see through this crisis. But on the other hand, what I also believe that this could be also be an opportunity to build on our strengths. There are new business streams opening up. The consumer behavior has completely changed, and somewhat this is a time to introspect and look deeper into our business model and see how we can adapt ourselves and our organization to this new model of working. So what we are doing today, the follow on two sessions will give us some time to introspect on these lines. Um, this is also a time to radically, structurally reform our own business, and the initiatives taken by the government are very welcome in this regard. So let me thank the Honorable Minister, sir, the Government of India and UP government for their liberal announcements on surplus and reform measures. So both of these are important. The surplus for the short-term capital infusion into the businesses and to make sure that they see through this crisis, and the long-term reform measures so that after 12 months when the industry is back on its feet, we can do our business in a more structured and more industry-friendly manner. Um, Unfortunately, some of the reforms announced by UP government were very bold, but had to be held up for some time. I'm sure the state government would take more such concrete steps. And sir, we take your inputs, and we would be sending you a list of suggestions, like Mr. Sikka said, very shortly. I'm sure if we can implement these and other suggestions, UP has a lot of potential with its vast customer base, with now the enhanced labor pool, and with its natural resources to be a real magnet for all the industry people. So we would be forwarding you these list of suggestions and inputs for you to pursue. I'm grateful to all the other speakers for participating in this conference. Let me now thank the sponsors for this conference. They are Fertilizers, OfficeNet, Metaflex Doors, and Jackson Group. Thank you for your contribution for today's event. So
Thank
I
you.
think now we can, yeah, thank you, Rajesh. We can now start the follow-on sessions now, both supply chain and managing cash flows. Over to you, Rajesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit. Thank you so much. And I think one of the, you rightly mentioned about the UP estate, where we have the largest consumer base, and agriculture is one of the foundation for the UP. And all of us have seen the kind of investment which the central government is focusing on the agriculture as a industry, as a future path where we have a lot of scope. I believe personally that agriculture is a focus area because our export on the agri products is lacking. Our technology driven, in spite of the best people, we still have a lot of gap in terms of new technologies. So I think these are the areas where if we start focusing, if we start continue to focus, and agriculture would be a great potential, not only for India but also for export. And that's what probably it's a long-term reforms which government of India has really seriously looked into it as a agri business, and that's where I personally believe it's a long way to for us to grow in that direction, and that will continue. That will really help the GDP to grow in that direction. So that's one of the best move which government of India has done so far. On the agri reform. The
Sure.
two topics we have taken into account considering the current COVID situation, and these are two most important topics which all of us in the industry believe is required for us to seriously look into the current situation. One is the supply chain logistic and linkages, sorry, and the other is the cash flow. I think for that, and these are the two topics which we thought probably would really help the industry and the people to really seriously look together as a team. And that's why we have the relevant speakers and moderator in both the sessions. So I would like to start with the supply chain linkages, where we have the session moderator, Mr. Arvind Kalra. He is the Director of Supply Chain of Perfetti. Mr. Kalra, most welcome. And then we also have speaker, Mr. Dilip Shukla Srinivasanji and Mr. Prashant. So he will introduce the speaker. Mr. Arvind Kalra, please.
Thank you, Rajesh ji, for introducing the speakers. Meanwhile, while we request Mr. Arvind Kalra to please take forward this session, I will request all the attendees who are joining, please send in your questions in the Q&A box. on your screens. So we can, look to go through as many of them as possible at the end of the session. Now I'll request Mr. Arvind Kalra to please take this session forward.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Um, I will be moderating the session on what kind of supply chain linkages do we see with respect to the current situation's impact on our economy. I am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, Arvind.
Okay. So I wanted to just share a file and give me a minute so that I can bring it up. So I have opened up the file on my desktop. Is it visible to you?
Yes,
It's
Arvind.
not visible to us, sir.
Okay, all right. So there I go. Now we all know we have been living in a VUCA world, which is volatile, which is uncertain, which is complex, which is full of all ambiguities. And we've been living in this for a while, for at least for last 30 years. This dimensions related to volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity has only grown up. Uh, Going back to what is the linkage between business and a supply chain? A business primarily, has a demand. It creates products and services, and then it develops the demand, grows the demand. Then it serves the demand by supplying the products and services, and it does with an aim to be better than the competition, and it offers value for the money to the customer, the consumer. And all these things are done in a sustainable manner for the business to survive, the business to grow. And then what is supply chain supposed to do? Supply chain is responsible for a lot of things, one, two, three. But to me, I think it is responsible to handle the demand and the supply in a situation of VUCA. And it does without having a blank check. It means that with defined costs. And it does with building up of responsiveness, with building up of agility, and building up of flexibility. That's what a supply chain is supposed to do. And it has been successful since its evolution over last 3 decades. So then, what's so different today? Which is what kind of change we see in the VUCA world due to COVID. And the speakers that I have on the panel, Mr. Dilip Shukla, Mr. Srinivasan, and Mr. Prashant, I would like them to cover the two dimensions on this. One, so far, what is that they have seen in terms of the way and the extent to which this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is changed due to COVID? How much has been its impact? what is the extent of success that they have seen in dealing with it? What are the vulnerabilities that they have seen in their supply chains and which part of the supply chain? Going forward for future, what is the change that they are seeing on the four dimensions of VUCA, and therefore what kind of shift will take place on many dimensions. For example, globalization, the supply chains have been globalized. Will this now shift? To what extent? Where? When? How? Will we continue to build lean supply chains? Which means that so far, we have focused on low stocks, low inventories, just in time. Will this change? Why? And what kind of strategies shall be built in terms of making the supply chains more responsive, making them more agile, making them more flexible and reconfigurable, and while working on people, while working on the processes, while working on the infrastructure, on all these dimensions, what kind of strategies they are likely to build. So I am sure that we will see interesting perspective coming out on this from my panel speakers. So with this, may I request Mr. Dilip Shukla to come and present his perspective.
Okay. My presentation, I have already sent the presentation. May I request that this presentation may please be, the slides may please be put on the forum here on the video?
Yes, Mr. Shukla, just give us a couple of moments. We're just putting that on.
Yeah. Okay. The slides you have put it, and may I request you to shift a slide, or I can operate from here?
I think we'll shift the slides for you. I don't think you have the access to operate.
Yeah. So what I will request that as I am through the slide, I will just use the word next slide, please.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, wonderful. Shall I begin? Hello.
Yes. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity to present. And I'm sure whatever points that has been raised in this forum and the extent to which the volatility has changed, extent of success, vulnerabilities in SCM going forward, change in 4 dimensions, and strategies to move with an agile and more reconfigured supply chain system. I have tried to cover all these points highlighted by the chairman of this session, and I'll go forward with my presentation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Hello? Hello?
Just a second, sir. We're just working this out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So my topic today is managing supply chain risks and disruptions, of course, because of COVID. And what has been our traditional supply chains? Well, we always focused, as the chairman also said, that just in time was the focus. Efficiency of supply chain optimized, that the cost of any inventory is the minimum. We focused on maximizing asset utilization. We focused on just-in-time philosophy so that the whole supply chain is inventory management, asset utilization is optimum. And these are the things what happened has made us very, very vulnerable, because we have removed all the buffers, we have removed all the flexibility, to absorb such delays and disruption in the whole process. So further, now when it comes to, this is for the manufacturing sector. Now when we come to EPC or contracting sector, we relied on most of the time back-to-back relationship with product supply chains in the project, and optimizing the construction efficiencies on construction materials. Now what has happened in the whole process is the demand and supply chain. While the demand is going to come down, the cost also is expected to increase by at least 15 to 20%. The main reasons for this cost increases, which I will be highlighting in my presentation in forward slides, will be very high reduction in productivity and production, thereby increasing the direct and indirect overhead costs. Another thing, what prevailed and what happened in our good times was that everybody was focused on their high two-digit growth targets, and mantra of growth took the main seat, and we took cash and cost, very close control and monitoring of cash and cost to a certain extent took a backstage. So with this traditional supply, our COVID situation and the risks and disruptions that they have erupted, there has to be a paradigm shift in strategies of managing supply chain risks and disruptions, and that is the call of the day. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Next, yeah. So you've gone one side extra ahead extra.
Is this okay now?
Yeah, this is right. Yeah. So what are the issues? Number one, companies have to shift gears on COVID awareness and prevention drive at all manufacturing units as well as various sites, which will reduce the productivity as well as production. They are in terms of creating awareness of symptoms, implementing distancing at workplace, regular sanitization of workplace, carrying out regular thermal screening and implementing individual employee sanitization protocols and following the SOPs thereof. This all will, and this will also reduce the working hours and the efficiency and the number of people working. So this will have a substantial impact to an extent of, as the general statistics say, 40 to 50% on the production and productivity. HR will have to now focus on immunological records of the employees. They will have to create alternative work arrangements for people at risk, people with suffering certain diseases who will have a low immunity, and they will have to create alternative work. If there are no alternative work arrangements, proper planning will have to done for them. The culture of COVID prepared organization with compromise on efficiency and productivity will happen. That is inevitable. The second issue would be the delayed delivery because of absenteeism and attendance protocols. There are going to be local containment policies of governments, trade, district authorities, which will contribute to absenteeism, labor shortage, and interruption. There is going to be quarantine of labor and staff while they report to site or factory. Like most of the states or companies have insisted on 14 days quarantine when even you are employing labor to interstate or interstate labor or your workmen. Flexible sick leave policies. Companies will have to err on the side of caution while dealing with employee sickness. So flexible sick leave policies will have to be implemented, and loss of production productivity due to flexible leave arrangement will be less expensive than the total downtime because of closure of the whole plant, because that is the ultimate risk. So it is better to be careful and err on the side of caution. Next slide, please. Hello, next slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
There will be travel restrictions, flexible working arrangements. So still, as we have experience, even though we have started on 33% travel and all that, even within city or within state, we have very high level of reluctance of various vendors or various suppliers to visit to your office or for discussions or technical clearances or design discussions, drawings discussions. So because their companies have imposed non-essential travel restrictions. Interstate travel, quarantine by states for out-of-state employees, labor, etc. also will further hamper productivity. Remote and flexible working in terms of work from home will be implemented for various design and engineering, uh, purchasing, and various back office teams and corporate business support teams, which will have its own efficiency and productivity issues. What are those issues for poor efficiency and productivity in flexible working arrangements? They are like Wi-Fi connectivity at home of the employees working on remote, efficiency and productivity at home because of cramped spaces in many joint families in cities, lack of environment at home compared to maybe office environment. Another issues which will impact efficiency will be lack of face-to-face collaboration and coordination between various teams, like say for an engineering product, it could be with instrumentation and mechanical process and mechanical. All those collaboration and coordination delays will reduce efficiency. Face-to-face reviews will also impact mechanism efficiency. So these are the efficiency and productivity issues when.
मैंने तो ऑफ किया हुआ है, वीडियो इज ऑफ.
Hello, can I continue please?
ऑफ किया हुआ है ना.
I think Dilip, yeah, Shuklaji, you can continue, please.
Okay, so previous slide there was one point, so I'll go to access. And another issue will be limited physical access, resulting in quality and delivery problems. Like we have a lot of manufacturing plants have stage-wise inspections for the products. And although we have an invite from a lot of inspection agencies for a video inspection, but then the reluctance on clearance and issue of MDCC because of certain limitations expressed during video inspection in terms of marking, in terms of dimension, in terms of measurements, that have posed problem in video inspection. So this will again delay planning, coordination, and expediting, which are very important part of SCM. Without physical visits, it may reduce the effectiveness of expediting process as such. So these are the main issues in supply chain management. I'll go to the solutions now. Next slide, please. How do I look at managing these disruptions because of COVID? Number one, like everybody, implementation of IT system and support. So we are all working very hard to align IT system and support for work from home and other flexi work arrangements. So companies are defining the remote working policies and are gearing up by investing in number one, IT system upgrades for system stability, network robustness, and of course data security, and also in laptops, cloud-based servers, leased lines, virtual servers, VPN firewalls, remote licenses. All this have been already invested, and our experience is that people are, the back office teams are able to work at almost 60-65% efficiency on remote working. Allowing the digital asset, there is a issue here that allowing the digital assets on employees' personal laptop could cause data leakage through USBs, emails, and internet. Data can be business secrets. Technologies designs, drawings, intellectual property on which various company has invested over the years, and company has also signed lot of NDA with customers or partners for this data. So this lockdown may be temporary, but data loss is permanent, and therefore companies have to come out with various policies for data protection. Like we have signed NDA with our own employees, apart from using various strategies like not providing the rights, certain limited rights for access to the servers, access to the data as and when required. All those strategies will have to be worked out. Excuse me, the slide is disturbed. The slides have gone. Yeah. So we go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the second strategy for managing these supply chain risks because of COVID disruption are mapping the supply chain. So everywhere we will have to carry out detailed analysis and mapping of supply chain to give visibility of several tiers of supplier. We cannot now those strategies of partnering will have to be relooked at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. Data and information sharing with very close coordination and interaction with suppliers and their sub-suppliers. Work with suppliers for their inventory, production, and PO fulfillment processes. And if required, of course, it may have an impact on price, but price and cash by providing proper advances and cash to the suppliers, motivate them to increase inventory, speed of production process, and also get allocation, their allocation for you to get your first product dispatches allocated. So rigorous follow-up with suppliers to get timely allocation, identification of exact source of disruption, and course correct the response. So every chain, every point will have to be more closely monitored on a virtual method, and open channel of communication with suppliers on principle of partnership. What are the other out-of-box methods? Embrace new method of digital approaches to gain visibility on critical component supply. Find alternative suppliers, look at overseas suppliers wherever these are possible. Look at tier 2, tier 3 suppliers as an alternative source. We will have to, manufacturing companies as well as the EPC companies will have, for their vendors, will have to encourage our just-in-time inventory policy and create buffer stocks so that we are able to meet our goals, and use innovative methods like video inspection of material and components, and whatever limitations as they come, as we experience, slowly they can be mitigated. Also break down the silos, cross-functional engagement on time of various disciplines like engineering, procurement, process, commercial, logistics, finance. They have to work very closely so that all those fringe delays on account of silos and cross-functional issues are curtailed in this time of crisis. Next slide, please. Yeah, so, and as everybody is saying, we discussed in previous presentation also, focus on cash. Cost focus, to what extent we all will be successful is to be seen, but focus on cash is going to be call of the day. It is estimated that 85% of MSME will run out of cash in next 2 to 3 months, and what packages, how they will be translated will play very major role in survival of those MSMEs. In effect, many large companies also will undergo a drastic change on their cash situation. We have to now focus more harder on receivables, pursuing aged accounts with a special emphasis, special team, commando teams to pursue aged accounts has to be implemented. and stagger or extend wherever it is possible payables to conserve cash. Another issues that will erupt are logistic options, because now as soon as this will open, truck and truck driver shortages will have started becoming evident, because backlog of 2 or 3 months has been created, and we are all struggling now to get drivers as well as trucks. We will have to, companies at the top management level will have to invoke logistic partners commitment and also look at alternative routes to logistic options. With all, to implement all these strategies, a new set of talent pipeline will have to be established by the companies to implement with a very, very big focus. What will be the disruption planning compared to what was our traditional supply chain management strategies? And those teams have to be familiar to disruption planning and digital supply network with new ways of working, including agile supply chain scheduling, critical path analysis, and forecast, which are adaptable and analytical. And of course, finally, senior leadership commitment on supply chain management is going to be very, very important. They will have to, MDs and CEOs of the companies will have to commit, support, and capitalize action plan to mitigate all holdups, all critical path points in supply chain disruptions. Next slide, please. Yeah, so to conclude my session, I have emphasized on these points. New supply chain technologies and strategies will have to be evolved that can dramatically improve visibility across end-to-end supply chain and create a complete agile supply chain. Focus on remote operations, create digital supply networks designed to anticipate disruption and reorganize ourselves to mitigate disruptions with technologies like cloud computing, 3D design, robotics, and align with the company's business strategy. More open and flexible IT architecture, which allows new software to connect to existing ERP in a simple and flexible way. The companies must create a resilient supply chain prepared to quickly adjust and recover from any anticipated interruption, and create a foolproof planning process. And as I said earlier, focus on cash and cost in business, because manufacturing cost of suppliers are bound to increase substantially because of restrictions and preventative measures coupled with reduced production and productivity. And finally, establish command centers and war rooms with supply chain experts empowered to make supply chain decisions to take care of the disruptions. These are my call of the day. I suppose whatever chairman of our session said, I've tried to address most of the points. And one of the important points also which are emerging risks for the whole construction industry that is emerging is that all the labor which are at all the construction industry side, as we are opening up, has a want to go home. Invariably, 95 to 100%, they are going home. And now when they go home and when they we call them or ask them to return, the monsoon season will start and there will be a disruption in our construction activity at our sites. So what is going to happen? Like manufacturing, because of in-plant issues, what I discussed, is going to lose 50% of the production, 40 to 50% of the production. Similarly, construction industry is also going to lose all the time from April to September till monsoon is over, and will have a large impact. So
thanks, Mr. Shukla. Thanks a lot for sharing your perspective. Very comprehensive, covering the current situation and your thoughts about the way forward for future. I will capture the questions which I get on the chat box and bring them up for you for your answers towards the end of the session. We are slightly running behind the schedule. So with this, I request Mr. Srinivasan to join and share his perspective. Mr. Srinivasan, I would like to request you to complete your presentation in next 12 minutes by 11:30, so that we have 15 minutes for Prashant and then 15 minutes for question answers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to all of you. Actually, I consider this opportunity a privilege to be with quite a lot of distinguished guests, and including the Honorable Minister. I would like to start the discussion with a crisp introduction of myself. I'm heading India operations for Santa Fe Moving Services, a global leader in providing relocation services. So what we do is we take the customers throughout their entire relocation journey in moving their household goods, cars, pets, homes, school search, visa and immigration requirements. As you can see, all of this is not affected because of the pandemic. So we also support in moving commercial and fine art shipments, industrial and pharmaceutical units. So it's a full mobility assignment management solutions is what Santa Fe offers. The relocation industry, our industry is considered to be a very sensitive industry as we deal with the emotional roller coaster of millions of people leaving the comfort and safety of their homes, moving to a new city, country, most of the times. Having been in this industry for over the 2 decades now, I can relate to the significance of a robust supply chain in delivering desired results. And thanks to the feedback I've received so far from many of the distinguished speakers who have spoken before me, I will try to keep my conversation very quick in about next 12 minutes. So the focus today we are discussing about is how the effective supply chain integration can mitigate complexities precipitated by COVID-19 pandemic and help build resilience for business and people. So here are my thoughts. The key business resources, I would put it across in a nutshell, have evolved over the decades, and we can safely say that for a supply chain to be functioning successfully, basically we need human resource, material, money, information, and technology. So please allow me to spend a few minutes on each of these critical aspects. So the primary resource is human resource, and we always say people are the backbone of the company. So what can be done to keep them going? Right. I'm now looking at from a perspective of engaging the employees. So as many pointed out earlier, the team should be educated on COVID-19 symptoms. Make sure there is a strict screening process. Some organization like the e-commerce and food delivery platform companies, they have taken to the next level. They are adopting more tools and modules to digitally communicate with their blue collar staff, sometimes even in their native languages, to ensure safety of their own staff and customers and to drive better service delivery. So the importance of this supply chain resilience or whatever training that you're taking should be part of the skills enhancement. And all the social distancing protocols and hygiene controls have to be strictly adhered to, not just now, even after the lockdown is lifted. As we all know that lifting of the lockdown does not imply the absence of the virus. So more precaution actually is required to avoid unconscious incompetency as we move along. Over communication in this regard never hurts anybody. It's always good. The employees may be stuck at various places, may not be in shape physically, mentally for various reasons. Also, the exodus of migrant laborers to their hometowns has really put a spoke in the aspiration of manufacturing, construction, and other labor-intensive industries to come up to speed right after the lifting of the lockdown. So, what can we do at this moment? Keeping the available employees in good humor through acknowledgements, appreciation, incentives is one of the ways to retain and pull the weight for a while till one or many other solutions, alternative solutions we figure out as we go along. So keep the succession plans also ready, right? So this is the time that your talent is going to be poached. A well-developed emergency succession plan is absolutely critical for companies to effectively mitigate potential risks, either through absenteeism or through departure of your key executives and personnel. And very, very critical is counseling for emotional well-being. So this is absolutely critical. If you want to make sure that whatever productivity level you want to achieve, whether it is 30%, 40%, 50% in the next few months, Realigning the workforce, including cross-functional swaps, is very critical. Now, nobody can say that I'm a specialist in engineering, I'm a specialist in finance, I'm a specialist in this, and whoever is available, the team should be able to multitask. This is absolutely critical at this point because we are looking at optimizing the resources to the extent possible. Uh, the constant communication, that is the key. So starting from the group management, the MDs, the CEOs, so the message has to be continuously going to the team, to the last level, or the various steps that have been taken to combat this pandemic in the organization, and also the action plans taken to reopen the production or service. This will go a long way in reassuring your employees to stay positive and motivated. Okay, these are few measures through which we can ensure the teams behind the execution is coping with the disruption and are ready to rebound. So now let's look at the next aspect, which is material. These days, the material required to assemble a final product is sourced from different countries and different continents. So the focus is, as Mr. Dilip ji rightly pointed out, should not be on the tier one supplier, but on their suppliers and further suppliers. Why? This will help to understand the depth of the capability and the risk associated with it. As any failure of your tier one supplier could have a significant impact on material or services availability. While most of us would like to go through an elaborate process of identifying and paneling a supply chain partner, we should always have a fallback plan, alternative source of supply. I'll give you an example from our industry. So when our drivers were not available due to COVID, we collaborated with courier services who were at the passes to deliver laptops and computers to support the work from home initiative of the government and also the corporate clients. See, we never worked earlier with courier services. It's our own, team which used to deliver these services. So also data suggests that, more than 200 of the Fortune Global 500 firms have had a presence in one industrial city. In light of the fact that one country's dominant role as the world's factory, when exposed to any disruption, puts the entire global supply chain at risk. Also, we can look at the Indian pharma industry. The import well over off of its APA, active pharmaceutical ingredients, from one country. Now, the government is selectively restricting API import and logistics challenges. We know that precipitated by COVID, the export is going to be difficult, and India being a major supplier to the world can lead to global shortage. So therefore, it is imperative that we have multiple logistics options, securing capacity for export and import. So some of the things that we are doing in our industry as of now is go back, revisit the agreements with your core suppliers, with your vendors, with your carriers, with your logistics providers. Review if there are any needs for new fleet configuration, obviously new routes and spot buying, so which you can see if that will help you to get additional capacity. And these days there are quite a lot of online freight platforms are available, so these are some of the examples which you can look at to mitigate this. So companies, as we do that, should also be prepared for planned closures which are not viable either temporarily or permanently. Alternatively, they should also look at repurposing the capabilities. Now we have seen in many of the news articles that Louis Vuitton and L'Oreal are using their production facilities intended for fragrances and hair gels to produce hand sanitizers. Likewise, automobile industry is manufacturing ventilators for hospitals. Right. So, in addition to providing a valuable resource that may help save lives, this also keeps your workers and facilities operating. So, to sum it up, while the set suggestions can be looked at, there should be agility once situation starts to normalize, because that is the only way you can bring up the production and the operation to speed. So, the question should remain is how agile are you? That's a question that the organization should look at. So the next resource which I'm going to talk about is obviously takes priority over all other resources at this moment, that everyone touched upon this aspect, that is the cash. We know that the damage to the economy locally and globally has been humongous, and the recovery is going to take a while. Governments have announced massive stimulus and is expected to be spending generously on saving lives, livelihoods, and reviving the economy. So from an organization perspective, what we should be looking at, or what we are already looking at, is that collecting cash immediately. So this is easier said than done. So the global operations with many of the companies may involve various modes of receipt, including letter of credit. So are we sure that everything is all right? Wait everything to ensure the payment is already in your kitty or would be received without any challenge. So this may sound really mundane, but look at the challenges that is created by your incorrect invoicing. So timely and accurate billing becomes so critical in the cycle of collecting cash quickly. And secondly, preserve cash as much as possible. So what we are doing at this moment is working out better credit term with our supply chain partners, usually longer, with our customers usually shorter, but obviously without upsetting the relationship. So having the close look at the inventory levels is also very critical, so the working capital is not blocked there. So I think these are some of this which we are already might have already implemented: travel bans, hiring freeze, cutting down training and entertainment expenses, and all these things. If ours and like ours is a labor intensive, manpower utilization is very critical. So either Magan labor is not available, your contract labor is not available. How are we going to utilize our permanent employees to that? So moratoriums have been offered by banks, and I think Mr. Pachuri touched that point that there is still discussion around how this is going to be extended to the industry. So there should be continuous engagement and discussion with the banks. Also look at various schemes offered by governments. Honorable Minister pointed out that a lot of efforts is going on, so it has to be approached with a positive outlook. It's easy to get carried away, think otherwise, but keeping a positive outlook and exploring all those options are really going to be helpful. And new financing options. So always look at all these new financing options as individuals. We are also looking at, I think even that is very critical. And so what the other thing that we are doing is negotiating with our owners of the office, warehouse spaces, fleets, where there are fixed costs involved, to the extent possible to renegotiate the rates. So they understand the challenge, we understand the challenge. Everybody is trying to work out what we can do together. So I will give one example of how we have repurposed in our industry is that now we started delivering computers to home. Right. Earlier, this used to be the responsibility of the or the forte of the courier services. But because these laptops and desktops and some of those equipments are extremely costly, so the moving companies are involved. So here we don't have the capabilities, we don't have the infrastructure. We work with 10 or 20 trucks, and not like courier companies with thousands of trucks. So now we are looking at how we're going to work together with the social distancing in offices. The companies are removing furniture. So where do they put the furniture? So we are now revamping our augmenting our warehouse facility. So we can see that how we can benefit out of this. So there's also, I read an article a few days ago. This is about Delhi. The restaurants to improve the footfall, they're talking about sanitized premises, sanitizing of tables, and thermoscanners at the doors, mask and gloves for the staff and patrons, screens between diners, tech-enabled QR code, so there are no avoiding contacts. So whatever innovative ways that we can think about it is how it's going to help. The speed of recovery actually depends upon our ability to bounce back to these crises. That means taking decisions and actions that can increase revenue and cash flow. So I conclude this discussion on cash. Let me look at the final resource, the appropriate information collection and accurate technology usage. So that plays a very pivotal role. We have touched upon the subject. We also know that visibility of supply chain is still a challenge. Most companies have visibility just up to the tier one suppliers. For companies, even if they try to do this excess of multi-tier supply chain, after some time they go through acquisitions, add or subtract products, open or close manufacturing sites, and so on. So the entire exercise became futile. So one thing that we have to look at is how effectively we are going to use IoT. So it is currently being used in our industry to track, authenticate products and shipments using GPS, and already powerful artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the blockchain technology, which is going to give you the source of origin. So everything is absolutely transparent. So this would give much needed visibility across the end-to-end supply chain, support companies to enable the collaboration, solve complexities and more agile decisions to enable we are prepared for these disruptions. These disruptions are going to come. Today it is COVID, tomorrow it can be volcano, day after tomorrow it can be something else, we don't know. So in conclusion, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. The one thing that we humans are better is our ability to learn from our cumulative experience and implement those learnings to come back stronger. The digital technologies are going to be a game changer to have more resilient supply chains. Do remember, so the supply chain resilience is only not about how business continuity. I read somewhere that one of the leading tobacco companies mentioned after a disruption that affected the entire industry, we managed to recover quickly than our competitors. Hence, we gained more market share. So, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my experience and feedback and suggestions. And let's keep at it and let's overcome this pandemic as a team effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan. Very, very deep insights on many dimensions and very, very nicely bucketed together across the four dimensions. That's the right way to look at it. Deep insights. So, without taking much time, I would like to welcome now Mr. Prashant to come up and share his perspective on the linkages of the supply chain with respect to the business, specifically in today's context of COVID.
Good morning to everybody. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, please. So you got about, I would like to give you another 15 minutes. So by 11:50 sharp, please wrap it up. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning to everybody. I'm Prashant Bhatmule. Would like to represent Welspun Flooring Limited, Hyderabad. I was recently shifted from Delhi to Hyderabad, and so it is a virtual tour for me post-COVID, or even the joining of the organization. So it's a very different experience altogether for me, and I would be sharing certain expectations on supply chain changes is expected in near future. Today we have been very much habituated to work in a specific way, which is face-to-face working. In last 1 month or 2 months post-COVID, I think everybody is habituated to work from home remotely and try to pass on various instructions and informations to our fellow colleagues to get the job done. No doubt it is a difficult situation. Everybody is trying to go through a difficult situation with the assumption that somebody else would carry out my job. In a sense, somebody else will give me a services. But in today's context, it is very difficult to get a smooth services. Like today, there are various zones which have been defined, which we were not aware maybe 15 days before. Now, every supply chain person has to really find out in detail where is my supplier located. From that time itself, it will start the activity. If we really think about, we have gone maybe around 25 years back when we were trying to find out every person's physical locations and we used to really visit them. But over a period, we have lost those controls. Like for a logistics partner, maybe the P or Cefex or anybody, I have not seen their offices, I have not seen their warehouses, but we were definitely doing the work with them. Similarly, for my import supplier or a CHA, I have not seen my devices, but today the situation asks for to identify their physical locations to understand whether they are into red zone or green zone, and basis which we'll be able to get the services. In case basis this, we'll be able to get the services in case we are able to identify a right partner. Now, going through these situations, we need what is expected out of a supply chain person is more of a identification of a problem, and instead of having that problem to occur, how do I prevent it? So what is required is probably to identify all the suppliers locations, the feasibility of suppliers readiness to work in today's context, and basis which we need to go on searching alternate situations also, or alternate suppliers also. Now the alternate supplier identification is not that easy, because one, today many of the suppliers have not started their work, and they are, even if they have started, they have their own limitations to increase their capacities, barring their existing customers. Now it becomes very difficult for those suppliers also to come onto our panel and start working for us on an emergency basis. So what it means is, everywhere we require to go on a very planned way. It cannot happen that we'll just rise today and say that I will be looking for alternate supplier today, and from tomorrow the supplies will be on. No, it is not physically possible. So over the period in last 20 days or 30 days, what we have learned is basically to identify the likelihood of the crisis and map those crises against our existing supplier base, and then look for alternate options. This is one area. Second thing which we need to understand is, yes, till yesterday we were trying to more work on face to face, but now digitalization is the only area wherein we can work, and we will be able to have our agility through this digitalization only to meet the expectations of tomorrow. Now today we don't know really how much my supplier is able to get me the supplies, because he is also constrained on his raw materials, his small parts which he is supposed to get to produce a specific product, or maybe chemicals to have that added in a process. But in this situation, we always need to have an alternative option open. So we again go back to maybe 15 years back, that we should have minimum 2 or 3 suppliers for every product, which probably we have lost in last couple of years, looking at having an additional cost benefit by maximizing the business to one source, or we can call that as a brand name of optimization of the sources. We have to again go back to the old days to have multiple sources. Now today, if we need to really overpower the situation, the best possible way is to identify current number of vendors, the locations of them, and to look for alternate vendors who are not in those zones, which will help us to take it forward. There are various constraints which are coming in today, right from small things like getting a courier collected or courier dropped. The people are not ready to move out of red zone. They are not allowed because of the government regulations. And of course, it is helping all individuals to stay safe also. So hence, how do I get that parcel collected and how do I get that delivered? So I need to make certain arrangements that a person from red zone has to travel with that parcel to a green zone and hand it over to a courier there. And from there, I will try to get it. So what is it? What it is looking is, it's basically a multimodal transportation. Multimode transportation, which talks about, we will be able to understand how economically or how cost effectively we'll be able to handle any of the situations. Now, going back to the old days, we should be talking about how my employees are encouraged to learn more on the new things, because even if I have been working in the organization for say 20 years, it doesn't help me today, because the new processes which are coming, like digitalization, which is like talk about Zoom or Microsoft Team operations, every person has to understand that, and basis which only will be able to perform. So identifying the weaknesses of my team members and making them enabled to work upon the new technology is the key of success. If you talk about today in the Uberization, what is happening now for safety purposes, even in Uber cars, they have started asking people to upload their photos with mask. This is nothing but identifying and using the technology for a betterment and 100% visibility of the process. So same thing would be applicable for us. Like whatever inspection would be happening, we need to have the physical videos or photos at the supplier's place to understand what is happening there. And we need to also develop a trust with our supplier, which will help us to take it forward. Else, we'll always be trying to find out weaknesses or the lacunas and try to reject the material, which will never help us to get it ahead. So what it means finally is that we need to definitely develop a mutual trust, which was probably going away in last couple of years. So the things are changing once again. We are going back to the olden days. and trying to have building the partnership with a barter system also. Like in these days, if I don't have the raw material, it is expected that one of my supplier who is giving material to some other customer, he would be having that material, and if he is not able to use it right now, whether I can barter from him to keep my production running. So this situation is again nothing but a barter system which we used to use it very long days back. Now talking about the today's context on digitalization, everything has come into digitalization and we are required to essentially follow the technology for our end results. Why I'm saying end results is what is the customer expectation from that time onwards. We need to bring it back and try to crystally clear and map it that what is the likelihood of my lead times basis which I should make my planning. So my planning also needs to be changed. So we are working today on a new abnormal way of working. So we can call that as a new normal, which is going to be for tomorrow. Till yesterday, probably we were more comfortable on having heavy stocks. Today, the days are moving away that we will have to again go back probably to the just-in-time inventories or bare minimum inventories. Reason is what is going to change is not known. The customer demands are totally flexible. We are not knowing what is going to be a test of tomorrow. The people who were using luxury yesterday may not be using luxury tomorrow. So the taste is going to change, which is going to affect the demand. And basis that demand, we need to have a flexible supply chain management, without which it is difficult for us to manage the supply chain. And in the bargain, what will happen is either we will have too high inventory or we'll be having a very low inventory, which in turn affect the total supply chain. So my takeaway from this situation is to unlearn the old practices and start learning the new practices and implement those practices, which will help us to move ahead and think and take the things in a positive way instead of only trying to get worried that today's situation is not that good enough. What will happen to jobs? What will happen to future? So instead of doing all that, I think we can take a very positive thinking and we should try to work upon a current situation as if you started today as a fresh. Thank
Mr.
you.
Prashant, another 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, I have completed. Thank you. Can go for question answer.
Okay, thanks, Prashant, for hard examples, practical examples from the situation that everyone is facing in supply chain today. And I think that's the way to go about, you said unlearn and learn the new ways. So it'll be a hybrid of what we did in the past few years ago and what we've been doing in recent years, and then deal with the uncertainty on the demand, deal with uncertainty on the supply side. So, if I were to just sum up the few takeaways from what I could gather from you and Srinivas and Mr. Dilip Shukla, I think what's coming out is that the disruption has taken place. It will take place again when we do not know. And the role of supply chain has come to a forefront. In many of the other discussions, it is also now conceived and thought that perhaps now supply chain is being seen as important as sales and marketing. And therefore, the opportunities for supply chain are going to be in abundance with this crisis. But for that, we need to come out of this crisis with success and develop our own resilience for the next crisis. The resilience is needed around our people, around our strategies. How do we make a dynamic review of the strategies? How do we do a resource allocation now and be prepared for a dynamic resource allocation? Um, how do we deal with our existing supply base? Perhaps press the reset button and redefine it. So, with this, let me then invite questions in the chat box. Or Rahul, would you like to unmute the guys who want to ask questions?
What we can do is request the participants to just put their questions in the Q&A on the chat box, and maybe we can read it out from there.
Okay, so yeah, so that's the way. Then I'll wait for the questions to come up in the chat box, and then I can request the panelists, relevant to the question to answer the question. So till the next one, till the first question comes up, I have been thinking about specifically the people front. Um, how how do we now bring out a different talent? What kind of different talent we bring up in our own teams, so that they can handle this crisis much more better in future? How do we make them more capable, and how do we make them more resilient towards this? May I request Mr. Shukla to kind of help me with his perspective on this?
Yeah. See, my this thing is that our today we have already policies in place on supply chain management, but now as we discussed during our various presentations, the whole remapping or resetting the button on the strategy, that has to be done with the top management on three fronts. Number one, going back to, as we discussed, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers for aggressive follow-up on virtual or distance remote basis. Number one. Number two, working on more on how we will overcome the difficulties on video inspections, video measurements, video review of documents, or all those aspects. We will have to restructure. So, according to me, it is about preparing a new SOPs on every chapter of supply chain management, of pursuance on mapping the supply chain, on finding alternative supply chain, look at the models of execution, how each and every disruption or exact source of disruption is found out, how we can course correct that response. So, like earlier, now top management will also have to be involved in every micro plugging of these issues. So these were my few takes, that it is about only now having a big focus on supply chain management.
Thank you.
The cross-functional as well as top management level.
Thank you. Mr. Srinivasan, I would like you to read this question. This has come up from Anirudh. He's asking, what's the perspective on cost impact from balancing forces, which is increased labor cost due to operational constraints versus reduced material or commodity costs due to subdued demand? So what's your take on this? I think the question is purely or primarily for the short term, because the prices for raw materials are likely to be lower due to subdued demand only for a short term, because the suppliers of the raw materials also will have the same impact. They are also going to see the constraints playing on their costs, and therefore the costs for them also will go up. But in the short term, what do you think? What's your perspective on this balancing force?
Thank you, sir. So my way of looking at it is that how the cost is going to be controlled, right? So I will give an example from our own experience. Mr. Shuklaji mentioned some time ago that he had to do a virtual inspection, or his company had to do a virtual inspection. All household goods survey, we have to do physical surveys. Okay, that we have to go to a home, we have to understand what are the items that have to be moved and all those things. But that virtual survey has become a very cost-effective method for us. Now the employee is not using his bike. There's no conveyance cost. So the employee is not spending about 3 to 4 hours on the road, because you take any of the cities, these are congested, normal circumstances. So, and also, whatever we talk between the customer, he says, she says, right? Nothing is recorded, right? Now, with the virtual survey, what happens is now everything gets recorded, whatever we discuss, whatever we have seen inside the home, what items that needs to be moved, and things like that. So, the question would be that, how we are going to make sure that which are the costs that are really affecting the pricing of our products. Okay, is there any way that we can cut down those costs? If it is not possible, it is not possible. We will give you another example that the normal courier mode for sending one laptop to anywhere within the city is about 300 rupees. Today we are talking about 1,500 rupees, right? So we need to also understand the customers will demand what they will demand, right? As industry, what is the message we are giving it to them? So they, as Mr. Shuklaji mentioned, Dilip Shuklaji mentioned, the cost of operations is increasing because of the quarantine measures, because of the various steps that we have to take to ensure the factories are safe, the employees are safe, the vehicles are disinfected, and a whole lot of things. So again, how we are going to put it across to our customers, that is very important. So the way we talk to our customers is how it is going to matter. So they may continue to think that it is a normal situation, and somebody else is offering at a very economical rate. Why you're not doing it? Then we'll have to explain what is it we are doing. And also the most critical part is the data protection, right? They are sharing all the information with us. If somebody is saying they are offering at a very economical rate, how are they able to take care of all those compliances? So I think the two aspects is, one aspect is we have to look deeply into how we can reduce the cost, and on the other hand, we have to look at how we are going to educate the customers so we are able to price a product accordingly. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Shukla. Sorry,
Yeah,
Srini, thanks.
Kaldra sir, I will just share our recent experiences. We have won few awards, and
Within next 30 seconds, please.
for the new.
We're running short of time, so within the next 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, 30 seconds. So I have a direct number based on my experience of 1 month. So since it's a forum, I will share. In general, all vendors have increased the cost by 15 to 20%. The cost of carrying out any construction activity at site with a likely loss of 25 to 6 months of overall construction inefficiency or closure is going to impact on the total balance sheet to 30 to 40% of the gross profit level on cash side. These were our analysis what we carried out.
Okay, so I request Prashant to take this question. This question is from George. I'm skipping the second question from Manojot because we have taken his first question. So let me skip the second question from him. Maybe I'll address him directly, separately offline. So Prashant, the question is, because of the disruptions, logistics speed has gone down and the costs have gone up. What do you propose on these issues?
Here this issue is a very pertinent issue in today's context. What is probably happening is we have been habituated to work with one or two service providers, and we are very comfortable because they were trying to take upon our inefficiencies. Now, what is required to do is we need to find out the local people instead of having a global supplier or global service supplier, so that we are able to identify what is the service available. Say I have to get a material from Bhiwandi, I need to find out a local service provider who can deliver me that material instead of waiting for some professional courier person who will be working in specific rules and regulations. So there are limitations. So how do I work upon alternate option That is the best thing which can work in today's context. Otherwise, the cost is definitely going to go up. At the same time, delivery time also is not predictable. So it is essential that we go for an alternate option.
Great. We got another 2 minutes to go, and
Yeah,
last question. It has again come from Anirudh, and it's addressed to you, Prashant. It says
yeah.
that you have worked with extensively with small vendors, suppliers in large numbers. Please suggest how larger companies can help their vendor network to become more productive, more effective.
Yeah, Anirudh, I think this is a very good question. Here, I would suggest that large companies needs to understand who are the suppliers or who are the business partners who would work with, who have been working with you for long term, and whose interest is there to work for future. Because there are certain suppliers who are opportunistics. If the supplier is opportunistic, we need to keep him away, and we need to ensure that the person who is working with us for long term and would like to continue, we should try to discuss with him what are his constraints, and therein probably we are definitely having a upper hand to talk to his suppliers to get certain raw materials or even change the processes, get certain additional machineries in view of making the supplier capable enough to handle our multiple supplies. When I'm saying this, I'm trying to optimize the supplies with that supplier who is interested. Now, basically, it comes under vendor development, that we need to ensure that our supplier becomes competent enough to work with us in today's context and support him, maybe, but in some context for financial help also to an extent. I hope this is answering your question.
Yeah, so I'll just wrap it up with my experience on this is that um, in recent years, the companies have moved away from strategic alliances, long-term partnerships, working at arm's length versus arms around. So I think that with the current situation, we will have to work very, very closely with our suppliers and collaborate them to a much higher level and just not talk about only costs, without collaborating with them. This will definitely bring in value for both of us and reduce the uncertainty both with the vendor and the buyer. So with this, I think we have reached the 12 o'clock time and time to say close to this session. So once again, thanks CII for bringing us together and helping us share our own experiences as supply chain professionals who have dealt with this COVID with the wider participation of many attendees. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, CII. Thank you, Mr. Sikka. And thanks, Srini, Prashant, and Mr. Shukla. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Kalra. Thank you so much. And I think you are absolutely correct that your experience and the people, the team, experience is very important for the people to learn because this is something which nobody has seen so far. And I mean, this is more like a war-like situation where people have to learn from others. We have to learn new techniques. We have to learn the new way of dealing with such crisis, and that's the way we should do it. I mean, that's thank you so much, Mr. Kalra, again once again, and thank you to Mr. Shukla, Mr. Srinivasan, and Mr. Prashant for joining us as a speaker. Thank you so much. Uh, our next session is on the cash management. And for that, we have with us our session moderator, Sandeep Gupta ji. Sandeep ji is also the Vice Chairman of CII Western UP and also the Vice Chairman and the Managing Director for Jackson Group. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Rajesh ji. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm audible?
Yes, you are
Yeah,
audible.
okay. So, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all our speakers and to all the participants in this session. My name is Sandeep Gupta, and I will be moderating this session, which is on managing cash flows. This global spread of coronavirus has resulted in high volatility in financial markets and has resulted in a widening credit spread, dried up liquidity, and is indicating an economic slowdown across the world. And organizations are struggling to implement an immediate crisis response mechanism while exploring long-term sustainability solutions to build resilience against future black swan events. And to address some of the key areas like how business can stabilize their cash position, understanding the current financial position, necessary action that can be taken to protect the position, and managing internal and external stakeholders. Today, we have with us three very renowned speakers from the industry to share their perspective with us on this topic of managing cash flows in such turbulent times. So before we move on to the speakers, I would just briefly like to share how we will structure this session. I will first have the address of each speaker, followed by a common Q&A session in the end, and all the participants can put their question in the Q&A chat box, which and then we will consolidate and then we will put them to the speakers. And my request to the speakers is to kindly limit your address to 10 to 15 minutes in interest of time. So let me introduce our first speaker to you. Our first speaker is Mrs. Vidya Srinivasan. Ms. Vidya Srinivasan is Executive Director and CFO of Puma Sports India and is responsible for finance, IT, and legal. Prior to Puma, Vidya has been working with a number of startups and growth enterprises in the area of finance and consulting, including Aditya Birla Retail, Glenmark for pharmaceuticals, and A.T. Kearney. Over to you, Vidya.
Thank you very much. Just to kind of quickly kind of cover this topic, is of course the most important parameter for any CFO to manage at this time of an event like COVID. And it's as the prior speakers have said, it's a time of huge uncertainty, a time of huge where we really do not know what exactly is going to happen. And I think all of us in our respective businesses are managing that zone. So of course, there are a few parameters that all of us are aware of as CFOs, but I'd like to just summarize it and then we can address it in the questions. So obviously, all businesses are vulnerable to this level of uncertainty, especially businesses which are currently struggling for profitability or which have low cash reserves. However, even businesses which are in reasonably good financial shape will also not be immune, mainly because we don't know how the situation progresses and how long it will take for demand and supply to come back on stream. I think we are hearing a number of different predictions from economists, bankers, people who kind of have reached out to us. And at the moment, I myself am not sure whether it is, I think, whether it was things will stabilize in Q3, Q4, or now what people are increasingly talking about Q1 or Q2 of next year. So in that kind of situation, we don't know how the demand is going to look like, what our sales are going to be, and even if we do sell, whether our customers will pay us on time. So the things that we can control is what we can control. What we cannot control, we just have to let it be. So the first piece, I think, according to us in a cash flow situation, is to ensure that our own financing remains viable. In these circumstances, I think we cannot assume that everything that we have had in the past will continue to be in place. That may not necessarily be the case as well. I think me at Puma, like all of us, are obviously trying to do scenario planning at this stage to try and figure out the scenarios on both revenues as well as cash flows in terms of where and how the receivables can come. We are looking at this point in time at every level and we're putting huge amount of pressure on customers to the extent we can, of course, to try and collect across the board because that is, of course, the single most important priority right now. We are also looking at scenarios to look at what is the worst case and how long, what kind of demand pickup do we see, and therefore what kind of cash flow do we see, and this will have to constantly evolve. Now, as a multinational, we have mechanisms which are given to us internationally, and as a German company, of course, we have a planning software that we use called Bellin, where we have to project cash on a weekly basis for the next month, on a monthly basis for the next 6 months, and that's constantly evolving and rolling. So we have to project cash on a every week situation as the situation evolves. Obviously, the lockdown and the regulations are changing, and therefore even our cash parameter, 70% of our business is retail, and therefore the cash view changes on a literally daily basis. So that is something that we are projecting. Apart from that, we are also kind of actively engaged with our financing partners to ensure that our credit lines are expanding to take into account the these. We are also looking at additional options. I think this is the time where we'll have to seriously consider lease financing, even though we as a company have never done that in the past, which is really to convert capex into cash to the extent we can, right? And I think the other pieces are fairly standard, which is really to kind of so we are like other companies really focused on a cash to cash conversion cycle. I've already talked about trying to collect and put pressure on customers to collect money. We are, of course, looking at delaying payments to suppliers and vendors. But I think what we also have to do, which is important, is to do it in as collaborative a manner as possible. We have to be aware that ultimately we have to do business with them, and just blanket no does not make sense. We have to kind of work fairly, closely and openly with our suppliers and vendors, because if we are under pressure as a large company, they are much more under pressure as a medium or small enterprise, and therefore we have to be very cognizant of the extent to which we can do this. So we are really doing it more by way of renegotiating payment terms. So rather than saying we won't release cash, we are releasing cash. We are paying our suppliers on time. We are paying salaries to all our employees, to our contract staff. But what we are doing is trying to renegotiate payment terms to the extent we can, so that we have a much more, we can defer cash flows to the extent we can. The other piece that is also important is that we've revisited all our capital investment plans. We have deferred, I think they've come down to maybe less than 10% of what was the plan for the year. And we continue to revisit them, and we're questioning every spend on capex. We've reduced our variable expenses to the extent we can, and we've also moved fixed to variable to the extent we can. So those are all, I mean, none of this is kind of rocket science, and I'm sure every CFO is kind of revisiting all the tools in the arsenal that they have to kind of get to this point and to kind of manage this process. I think one of the things that we are finding most useful is to actually use leveraging industry bodies. I'm as part of retail. I'm part of the RAI's CFO group. We are obviously part of CII. I think one of the things which are really, really helpful is that we are exchanging notes with other CFOs, including even CFOs from competing companies who we've never reached out to in other times. And there, what we've been able to do is to actually get tips from them. For example, one of the things we're pushing for is rent freezes with malls during the time of lockdown, and also moving to revenue share arrangement post lockdown, because even if our stores open, we expect walk-ins to be lower. So having that network of CFOs and how other malls are reacting is something that is really useful for us, and I think that is something that we should totally leverage. Yeah, I think Rahul, over to you. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vidya. I think we got some very interesting perspective from Vidya, including kind of actions, what they are planning, like they're doing various scenarios, planning on revenues, cash flows, doing worst case scenario planning. As she rightly said, conditions are constantly evaluating, so we have also to innovate constantly. I think one good idea is like engaging with other people, including your competitors, so that you can get new ideas which you can implement. I have one question, Vidya, which probably I will take up in the end. We will now move over to our next speaker, who is Mr. Rajneesh Magan. Mr. Rajneesh Magan is CFO for Bomber India Private Limited. Mr. Rajneesh Magan is CGMA from CII UK, PGDBM Finance, CMA India, and BCom Honors Delhi University, and also has certificate in strategic leadership from IIM Ahmedabad. He has over 30 years of professional experience in the areas of finance, accounting, and controlling. Commercial officer of Bomber India Private Limited, a German MNC, since April 2012. He has worked in areas of fundraising in international market, direct tax, including cross-border taxation, acquisition and amalgamation, strengthening of GRC systems and processes, cost management programs, key stakeholder management, and managing strategic issues with board. So over to you, Mr. Rajneesh.
So thanks, Sandeep and CI for having me here on the program. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So the question where today, the topic which we are discussing today is very pertinent. It has always been the most important topic for all the businesses. But nevertheless, it's got its importance more in the today's time, especially post-COVID. And as we know that COVID has been the black swan and the biggest business disruptor we have seen in our lifetime. I've not seen an event like this happening, which has impacted the business across globe, across human race, across industry. So it's never been an event like this, and nobody would like to have an event like this in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in this era of uncertainty, and what I think, and what we have been talking between our friends also, so it's a FUD environment. So FUD. So FUD is basically environment full of fearness, uncertainty, and doubts. Everybody is in the FUD factor and doesn't know how to handle this kind of scenario. And we, as you already mentioned, that we are a German company and we are into different business verticals which address the different sectors of the infrastructure sectors in the economy. So we take care of the cement plant manufacturing. We are into airport baggage handling system. We are also into the e-commerce automation warehouses for the e-commerce industry. So 4 or 5 business segments we have, and different segments, but all at the same time, more or less, they are addressing to the infrastructure development across the country. But what we have seen, this COVID has been a great leveler. It has impacted not only us, it has impacted the companies which are much bigger, or MNCs, Indian companies, listed companies, unlisted companies. And the cash has always been a king for the business for its survival and growth. The need for cash has never been so great. And I've always been using this terminology in our internal discussion with our internal stakeholders in the organization, that sales is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is reality. So it's not only good to have profit in the books, but unless you have cash in the books, it doesn't make sense. So the importance of free cash has never been felt so more as in today's days. And you definitely need a balanced cash flow for a business survival. But the impact now coming specific on the post-COVID scenario, what we have seen is that there has been a tremendous change in the customer behavior also. When we are in 5 different business verticals, our set of customers are typically different in the entire 5 business verticals. But the generally customer behavior across all segments, more or less, has been similar, that everybody wants to conserve cash, even though they are very large companies. When we do the projects for them, some of them are also PSUs. I'll come specifically to the PSU point later. And some of them are very big, large companies in India. Everybody has a fear because nobody knows when it's going to end. This ordeal is going to end in 2 months, 1 month, or maybe it goes up to December, or even beyond next year, or beyond this year. So the conservation of cash, some of the, especially MNC companies also we have seen, which are very large in India, they've got instructions from global headquarters and we have been their customer for 20 odd years, and normally the payments have never been delayed. But the instruction from global headquarters is negotiate with your, contractors or the vendors, get the discounts upfront, which are unusual because the contracts have already been negotiated and are in the execution phase, and also ask for deferment of the credit period. So usually we have 30 days to 45 days credit, which we have been giving to our customers in the pre-COVID scenario. But post-COVID, the normal demand is come to 120 days. So if you as a contractor is being asked to work for a company 120 days credit period, you also have your bound within your own set of cash available within the existing business, and also the credit limits available to from your banks. So this has put companies like us, especially who are into the infra, in a difficult position these days, especially past 3 months. And we are trying to find a solution and trying to address this. And the impact of this is also that we are also not now. Typically, we were closed until 20th of April because there were no operations. So after opening of 20th of April, we also started opening our factory, and our office opened also last week. And then our project sites were also all came to standstill for about 45 days. Now, gradually, when we want to open the project sites, there is a different set of problem we are having there. Workers are not there, but that's a business issue. But the issue is now that once the site opens up and you want to raise an invoice, you have to do the work. You're not able to do any erection commissioning activities and raise your invoice on the customer, which will have a further impact on the cash flows in the business in the coming months. And this is now connected specifically cash flow impacting due to migrant labor issue, what I'm talking about. But now what we have seen is that these issues are not only for us, it's for the entire industry. And I don't think it's going to get resolved before December. Most of the contracts, we also invoked our force majeure clauses with the customers, which means we would get a suitable extension of time after the lockdown is over. But this is an issue which has impacted all of us equally, and we have to find a solution to this within ourselves, from the industry, with our customers, sit and discuss with them. The key factors which just come to my mind is that we have to revisit the available financing options. Because if the customers are delaying payments, and even if they are not agreeing to extended credit terms, they want to delay payment, you still have to rely on your bankers for the immediate sustaining period, intervening period, to enhance your working capital limits, typically for 6 months to 1 year, till the time the situation normalizes. So we have to revisit the available financing options. But even if you have existing loans, you look for some offshore loans on external commercial borrowings and bring down your existing rate of interest to reduce your financing cost. This is a typical issue which was also on our table, and we also we raised one ECB only in the month of April. Then the other issue which was also mentioned by my Vidya prior to this is that we are also looking at the cash conversion cycle, that it is getting further extended. Normally, your DSO was always never less than 90 days. It was always in the 90 days to 120 days bracket, even pre-COVID, because some of the customers were always paying in time, some were already delaying because a lot of projects are connected to the site milestone payments. So this optimization of cash conversion cycle in the current scenario has become a big challenge for us now. How to optimize this? We are still looking at it. Since we are also German MNC, we also have the same dynamic cash flow issue, and we give monthly cash flows to the headquarter, and every month we have to revisit it and keeping our year-end forecast, revising our year-end forecast, which is on a calendar year basis. In order to further optimize on the cash, we are looking on special focus on variable cost optimization, which whatever is possible within our sources in the given scenario, we are trying to look at the minimization, optimization of the variable cost. Other point also with Vidya mentioned, I have the same point, is that we have deferred the unwanted capex, which was already in our business plan for the calendar year. We have deferred it, but now the high focus is on the capex of digitization and automation. We have a plant which was automated reasonably. We have to automate more because of this labor issue now. And there is more digitization on the business processes also will have higher focus from our side and also from the global headquarters. What we are trying to address, and the next point, is to expedite our receivables, which are earlier outstanding prior to COVID. Because the 2 months there has been no business practically, 23rd of March till 20th of till 6th of May, we have had zero revenue. So whatever were the outstanding receivable, we are trying to expedite, approach our customers, even though they ask for high credit period, we are also using all means, requesting them. If they seek to the request, it's fine. If they do not, then we also are using the other measures, which are legal measures, that, okay, please pay us. But the one typical behavior which I also mentioned in my earlier point was that the government has given clear instruction to central public sector units to release the payment for all the companies in time, especially MSME within 45. I know few MSME companies where the government is also not releasing payment to them in 45 days. This is despite finance minister specific intervention and mention in the our fourth draft, which was also Nav Bharat Nirman, which was released on in the fourth draft, that all CPSC payments should be released within 45 days, which is also not getting released, whether MSME or non-MSME, both cases. Internally in Boimer, we are also have inventory has always been our high focus topic to manage inventory, because we have production unit also and projects also. So there is a work in progress at projects. You have WIP and finished goods and raw material in the factory also. So we are trying to see that how best we can optimize the inventory. We don't have an answer yet, because the optimization of inventory requires the end-to-end supply chain arrangement also. And we also work with a lot of uh, A-listed suppliers, B-listed, and some D-listed also, which are the job workers who do some job work for us for the fabrication part. So most of the job works, some are in orange zone, some are in red zone. So we haven't found an answer to this yet, but this is a very high focus topic on our table now. The other topic also which we have and we are trying to address is convert possibly whatever is possible fixed cost to variable. If possible, convert the fixed cost to variable as much as possible, so the optimization can happen. And the other issue is that, which we have started inculcating, especially post-COVID in our organization, is bring across CFO behavior across all departments. You know, it's not that CFO is only a agenda on the CFO table or CEO table these days, that cash is important and cash is in the key for the business. It has to percolate down to all the business, whether it is sales or it is operations or it is other business functions. They have to act and behave like the CFO and conserve cash, because this is where, if the entire environment is like this, so everybody has to act cautiously and judiciously to conserve the cash. So that's been the message within organization also, and we are trying to address. And as Vidya also mentioned, that we also have done a different kind of scenario planning, because we have to give a quarterly forecast, revised forecast to the global headquarters. So immediately after COVID, we had the instructions from certain things to be factored into our forecast and certain assessments to be done by the local subsidiary in India based on the local conditions. So we also analyze and sort that what if the lockdown is over in April, what if in May, or what if in June, and then the different kind of scenario planning on the revenue and profitability and cash. And all those has been done. But let's see how much of this can in practically be real, because a lot of it is dependent on the external factor, where the customer is also very key, that everybody works with the same efficiency into the system, including the banking and the finance sector. So hopefully this audience should be over soon, and we all are waiting that things come back to normal. And this kind of normal should not be the new normal in the future. This typical cash behavior of the business should not be the new normal. Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Sandeep. Yeah.
Thank you, Rajneesh. I think what actions you are taking, quite a few of them are very similar to what Vidya said. And I think quite a few things are very fundamental. So the need to conserve cash is very fundamental. But only thing is, I think we all now are realizing it now after going through this problem of this pandemic. Okay, and mhm. So let's move over to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Manoj Maheshwari. He is AVP Finance and Accounts for Sage Publications India Private Limited. He is a chartered accountant and masters in business finance, and is currently engaged with Sage Publications as Associate Vice President Finance. He is a business transformation leader with 15 plus years of rich experience in corporate finance and strategy, treasury, operations, GST and taxation, shared services and business process management, budgeting and forecasting, risk management, technology, and digital initiatives. And prior to joining Sage, he worked with British Telecom, Airtel, and ENY in various finance leadership roles, wherein he led cross-functional teams across globe and integrated their efforts to maximize operational efficiency. Right, Manoj, over to you now.
Hi, can you hear me properly?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Sandeep, and thank you, CII, for inviting me for this very important topic on discussion on the cash flow. Now, frankly, my earlier learned speakers have covered most of it because the fundamentals of managing cash, remains the same. However, I would like to open by saying a saying from Jack Welch. He says that if I have to, evaluate a company on three measures, so the three measures that I will look at is customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and cash flow. So, the need for cash flow cannot be stressed more than in current times. Even one of the American politicians has said, balance sheet and P&L are fiction and cash flow is a reality. So we're not running away from the fact of the importance of cash flow. Now, having said that, let me bring in a perspective from a SME perspective. I work for a publication house. We are a global publication house, and of course, we also have our similar requirement from in terms of reporting global, etc. But what is fundamentally key is that we've been focusing on our cash flow management not just because of COVID, but from pre-COVID times. So while when we do our budgeting or forecasting, not just the P&L and balance sheet is important, so is the importance of cash flow forecasting right at the beginning. So the three statements, balance sheet, P&L, and cash flow, all go in together when we do the planning for India or when we submit for globally. So that's really key. Having said that, of course, the discipline to manage cash has strengthened even more. So we are very looking at our weekly cash flows in a very hard manner, and taking a look at everything possible on both sides of cash management, which is whether it is the inflows or the outflows. Now, on the inflow side, the thing is that in our business we deal with both the colleges, institutions, and government institutions, as well as distributors which are spread across the country, and also in unorganized markets. So it's of course putting pressure on everyone in terms of receivable. However, we are doing everything possible to convince our customers to sort of do what they can in terms of paying us. Even what we saw was forget the fact about the intent. The thing was, we saw that logistically it was becoming impossible for some of these people who are in unorganized sector to pay us, and they would usually say that we don't have access to our systems, or we can't do this or that. However, on the other hand, on one of our verticals of the business is the journals business, where we deal with institutions, etc. So we persuaded our sales team to sort of negotiate with them and make sure that they do the NEFT or RTGS or whatever they can do, so that the cash keeps flowing in. That is on the inflow side of things. The other important thing, as my earlier speakers have said, is of course every company today is doing scenario planning. uh, Everyone is looking at that, what should be our forecast if the market opens up in the next month or next 2 months or 3 months, and we are also looking at that, and also looking at our 12 months projections. Now, on the inflow side, it is very important that we just don't rely on the existing streams of revenue, but also keep our thinking hat on in terms of what could be our new streams of revenue. If, let's say, print business may or may not do so well, so what sort of products are we are bringing in terms of electronic products? So we are we along with our various teams involved, including the IT sales teams, are really looking at what sort of products we can bring in so as to be able to keep the revenue flow on. Also, one of the things that we are looking at is, can we offer some more discounts to customers who are willing to pay well in time or in advance? So that is also another measure that people can look at. And also, my advice for other MSME businesses, because the government has, uh, given so many, taken so many measures for MSMEs. So all the MSMEs should look at what sort of credit line that they can avail, of course, depending on the criteria that they fill in. So that is on the, inflow side of business. Now, at the same time, the outflows are also extremely important. So we are looking at, all our variable costs, so really really giving a hard look at our variable costs, and questioning everyone involved, whoever has the budget holders, in terms of how essential is that expense, and what can we do. And we are going on to the extent of saying, of course, the reforecasting is happening, but we are even going on to the extent of asking them, okay, what are your controllable levers? Let's say today you started your, in the initial month, let's say you started with a forecast of say 100, and now you're saying, okay, given the situation, I'll try and manage with 60. But what if the things don't go the way we like? So within that 60, what are your controllable levers? So that's really important. Then of course, all the capex plans, etc., are being deferred or relooked at. Now coming on to a very important topic about, vendor management. So I was speaking to one of my friend. What he told me was that what they are doing is, after releasing the payment to government or other banks, etc., after doing all the things which are really mandatory, whatever balance is left is for the vendors. Now I have a little different view on this. Your vendors are your key stakeholders as well. So it is very very important that you take them along. So in these times, the communication with your vendors is really important. So are you, doing your communication effectively in terms of telling them what you're doing, what you're not doing? And also, what should not happen is that, we completely, restrict the payments to the vendors. So what we are trying to do is, let's say if a vendor dues are due for more than 2 months, we are releasing at least 1 month worth of dues, or something like that. So the communication is very important, not just with your vendors, with all the stakeholders. And I think one of the other important thing is, as Anish also mentioned, is bringing the right behaviors across the board in the company. So it should not happen that only the finance department is looking at cash flows or looking at everything, but the others, are not so much aware. So it is very important that all your other stakeholders, whether it is the sales teams, whether it is the marketing team, they all understand that what the company is going through, and make justified demands in terms of any payments that need to go to vendors or other stakeholders. So, one of my colleague was suggesting they've even created a war room wherein whenever weekly cash flow management discussions are happening, the CEO, the COO, and the CFO all are part of those discussions, and not just the CFO. Another important thing I would like to highlight is, being part of various CFO communities, what I've seen is that the most talked about discussion is what people are doing in terms of payroll cost. And the key discussion which I see happening in so many groups is, are you looking at cutting salaries, or reducing salaries, or deferring salaries, etc. The point I would like to make here is, all businesses should look at such measures, probably towards the end. Our employees are such a key stakeholder in taking their business along with us. So in our company, rather than doing any salary cuts or anything, our management has actually taken a decision and gone on gone ahead with the normal increment cycle, including giving promotions to those who are deserving. So taking your employees along is really really important in these times.
And the other thing is, one has to look at the opportunities quite proactively. So I'll give one example is that, when all of this lockdown, etc., was to be announced, our management took very proactive steps to see that how will we manage this whole situation. And we were very quick in, for example, some of our employees were not having laptops, etc. So we were very quick in negotiating with the vendors and were able to have a very good bargain in terms of getting certain laptops and lease, etc., which is really helping the cash flow. Otherwise, for the same thing, we might have spent twice or thrice. So, proactive measures, negotiating well with the vendors, those are some of the important things that one can look at. And I think overall, at the end, I would say it's cash flow management is not just about only looking the cash component. I would say it's about overall rethinking the business. It's a holistic approach. It's not just about the money only. You have to see that what changes you are bringing to the business models, whether in terms of revenue, how efficiently can you manage the cost, and how efficiently you can take everyone along. So communication with all the stakeholders is really really important. And as they say, the more a business owner knows about their cash flow, the more empowered they become. So I think I would like to close by saying that. So it's really important, if you know your business and the cash flows really well, then you're really empowered to see how you can influence and impact the relevant and important things. So thank you.
Thank you, Manoj. As I said, what I see that most of the initiative which are being taken are pretty much common and they're pretty much fundamental. One thing you rightly said is these are very difficult times and there is a fear of unknown. So we need to focus on what we can control, because what we can't control, we can't control. So what we can control, we need to be totally focused on that. And some of the initiative which everybody talked about was deferment of capex, doing scenario planning for various cases, worst case scenario planning, moving fixed cost to variable, optimizing cash conversion cycles, renegotiate with vendors for better terms, and then again, what is very important again is that this managing cash flow is not only CEO's responsibility. All the functions
That's right.
have to wear the hat of a CFO and think of it as their prime most important responsibility. So what we can do is we can now move over to Q&A. Have we received any questions and answers from the participants?
Request all the participants to please put up their questions in the Q&A and the chat box for the speakers to take them up.
So by the time we receive the questions, I have one question. So, you all talked about converting fixed cost to variable cost. So what are the various ways of doing it? Probably I would like first Vidya to answer this, followed by maybe others.
Yeah, I think in retail, obviously the biggest fixed cost tends to be rent. Okay, and rent is something where we are actively negotiating with our key, landlords, mall owners, etc., to move to a revenue share arrangement. Because we expect that obviously right now we are looking for waiver of rent during the lockdown period, but post that also we are expecting walk-ins to be significantly lower, both because of timing restrictions announced by the government, as well as obviously customers not coming into the same extent. So I think a revenue share based arrangement is what we're negotiating for, and so we'll have to see how it moves. The second piece that we're looking at is in certain cases we're looking for moving some of the other cost lines, like for example we pay to have a more incentive based approach wherever it is possible. right? So that is something that we are looking at also actively. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Rajneesh? So, what are
So,
specific actions you are taking to convert your
so,
fixed
so
cost to?
yeah. So typically now, what in last 2 months, what we are trying to analyze and have zeroed on few of things is that what are the functions which possibly can be outsourced, which were done in-house. If possibly can be done outsourced, then we can convert the fixed cost to variable cost. This is the area
Yeah,
which we as a focus area within our
very,
organization.
yeah. Okay. And Mr. Manoj, what about you?
Yeah, so I think two of the good examples Rajneesh and Vidya have given. So yeah, outsourcing is one option to be looked at. Another thing in our business is when we sort of used to print books, we used to sort of print them in bulk. So there was a fixed cost which would go say like, let's say you would print 2,000 copies of a book or say 1,500 copies of a book. But now we are also looking at print on demand model. So therein of course,
Okay.
even if you want to print 5 books or 10 books, so those kind of models one can look at to sort of minimize the cost and converting fixed cost to variable. That's one example I would like to quote.
Okay. Then another question is, so what's your take on like how long will this last, and when do you think we will be able to bring a business cycle back to say pre-COVID times? Do you think it's going to come back to the same level in near future, or it will take time? And
I think it's as good as anyone's guess.
So I think actually, the more this continues, I think we have to fundamentally get used to a new normal. I think, for example, I'm talking. I mean, I have many friends in the outsourcing industry, which has moved fairly quickly, where huge amounts of people have moved to a work from home model. Now, so people are actually getting productivity gains, and they are saying, do I really need to have that big an office space? Do I really need to have all the employees
Exactly.
coming to the office all the time? For example, so some offices have actually extended work from home till December already. Okay, and so like for example, the real estate model for office space is going to change fundamentally. Travel is going to change fundamentally. Hospitality is going to change fundamentally. I also believe, whether we like it or not, many businesses will go out of out of business. So I think, I frankly, I think as the earlier speakers in the earlier session had said, we need to get used to the new normal. We just hope that the new normal is, I mean, that transition period should not be, I mean, hopefully will not, should not hurt. This should be the peak of the hurt, which also I don't know. We don't know how long this will extend.
yeah, okay, very true, very true. Hello. Yeah. So, can we now take up question from the participants? Do we have any questions?
Yeah, so we have one question from Aniruddha Khadek, which he has asked. Given that the cash flow has been stuck since the last 3 months in spite of increased unit costs, how do we envisage suppliers to prioritize enabling cash flow and recovering increased costs for the first 3 months at least post resumption?
And this question is for whom? I don't see this.
Not particularly anyone, maybe one of the panelists can take it.
Can you please come again with the question? A lot of echo was coming on the background.
Is
Yeah, I'll just repeat it. Uh,
is this a question from Mr. Anirudh?
yeah,
Okay, so I'll repeat the question. Given that cash flow has been stuck since the last 3 months, in spite of increased unit cost, do we envisage suppliers to prioritize enabling cash flow over recovering increased cost for at least the first 3 months post resumption? Rajneesh, would you like to take this question?
So I think I already said in the beginning of our discussion that the whole business, the whole economy, business, everyone is affected alike in this entire disruption due to COVID, which has affected the cash cycle dramatically. So, but at the same time, we have to sustain and make our suppliers, who are the key stakeholders in your business success and a business, you cannot let them down and have to dip into your sources, because your suppliers may not be as large as you are. They might be MSME company or a small individual companies also. You have to see that they also sustain in this difficult time, and you dip into your resources or take back on raising the money from your banks.
Okay.
I also think that visibility is very important.
Yeah.
I think when you plan your cash flow, you need to actually give a very clear visibility of when you're going to release funds, so that not just defer for the sake of deferment. I think they need to have a clear line of sight of how the money is going to come.
Okay. Then we have a question from Mr. Dilip Rath. While the industry is looking up deferring the supplier's credit, how do you feel? Is it a solution to the present problem? Manoj, would you like to take this question?
Interesting question, I think. I think my take on this will be, let's first tackle with the short term to medium term as far as each of the business is concerned. I think fundamentally, when we talk about the 5 trillion dream for the Indian economy, what we really need to look at is not really from a cash flow perspective, but overall, what should be the shift in supply chain from China and several other countries to India? So how well are we, sort of how well the government as well as all our business leaders are going to be leveraging this opportunity and get many of those industries and their supply chain shifted to India. I think that will probably help us reach more closer to the 5 trillion dream.
But the way Manoj, sorry, just a point. Want to add a point to what Manoj mentioned. It was very important. The way things are in the scenario because of the supply chain disruption and what's happening between US, China, especially, and post-COVID, most of the business which is going out of China supply chain is moving to Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and perhaps Bangladesh also. India has so far not been the major beneficiary.
I agree, and
so
that's
far.
what that's why I mentioned that it is very important that how our government and our top business leaders are able to pitch in for that. We all see in this news that we would have expected actually that a lot of the supply chain might shift to India, but we're not seeing it as much. There are of course few gains that we have seen, but not as much as we would have expected. So I think it's very important that all of us, the industry bodies and the government comes along and show the part to the global investors that what will be the benefit that they will have if they invest in India. We've already given some sort of tax relaxations, etc., but I think there's still more to be done, both in terms of infrastructure as well as bringing in the transparency that they need. I think that will help us go more closer to the 5 trillion dream.
I fully agree. And also, I think shifting of supply chain is something which can take years. It is not something which is going to happen in short term. Whereas the pain which we have, all the industries are feeling is very, very short term. Even we want to have an alternate supply chain, but again, developing alternate vendors from in other countries, quality issues, delivery issues. It's a time consuming process. It will take time.
Absolutely.
It can take years to build that alternate supply chain.
Yeah.
Right.
Then we have one question. Again from Mr. Dilip Rath, I believe. Or yes, every interest. Have you done this question? No. Every industry talked about conservation of cash in this scenario and deferring capex. What will happen when government indebting economy to boost from 3 trillion economy to 5 trillion by 2025?
Yeah, that's why we just covered this 5 trillion
Yeah.
dream. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just the way the now GDP growth are projected post COVID, especially this 2025 will be 2032 in the given scenario post COVID.
Yeah,
Okay.
possible.
Yeah, it'll not be 25 anymore.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. And next question again is from Anirudh. This question borders contract law, but does this kind of scenario have any mention in the contract law which allows for renegotiation of contracts? If it is not explicitly stated in the contract, what about leveraging the change in law clause?
So this, I take this question if you permit me,
Yeah.
Mr. Sandeep,
Yeah. Sure.
because
Please. Please.
we have a lot of contracts with private customers and also with government, and especially post COVID, what we have seen that government customers and most of it are Indian based on Indian contract law. Some are also FIDIC contracts. So what we have seen is the government customers have not come back to us to renegotiate the contract on the pricing post COVID. But most of the private customers have come back and said we want upfront discount and all this, and then we also, because once we invoke the force major, customer also wants discount. But our invocation of force major in the law is only with respect to seeking extension of time in the contracts, which should happen once the lockdown is over. So the contract law even does not say so. The customer have a right, and you as a contractor can, or as a supplier can say no to the customer. No, we are not going to give discounts in contract, because there will be a contract provisions in the contract with respect to termination for convenience or termination otherwise. You have to look into those specific provisions in your contract.
Absolutely. I think.
I'll add a very important point. Allow me, please.
Yeah. Please.
See, there is a provision of force majeure, but force majeure allows only extension of time. But there is a second provision in the contract, which is called change in law. And change in law permits cost consequences. So from your side also, you can represent the cost consequences under change in law, because Disaster Management Act under Indian contract law or under any contract will fall under change in law. And that allows cost consequences.
So it's a debatable point. To my understanding, the way we examine the issue with our people and the experience with whom we are working, the change in law would cover any new law which is enforced or the existing law which has impact of the taxation, whether it is the indirect tax of GST increasing and all. Any change in cost enhancement due to COVID, customer would not pay under change in law. We can always have a legal recourse to that. Definitely, it is open.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it also depends on what kind of organization you are dealing with. Different organizations look at it very differently. With private organizations, it is much more easy to renegotiate, depending on what kind of clauses you have in the contract. So it will vary from organization to organization.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I think that
this will be helpful. This will be helpful if customer asks for a discount. You can represent for a cost increase on account of change in law.
This is what we have been doing for last 2 months. So they don't pay us extra. We don't give any discount.
Correct. No, because government under FIDIC, under ADB, under all World Bank contracts, or even if you take Indian contracts for National Highways and everything, authorities, they all allow cost consequences on change of law.
Yeah, that's right. But provided they consider the disaster management as change of law, because the law is already
recognized by government. It is already recognized by government. So you can consult any lawyer and he will straight away give you a tick. Yes.
In the government contract.
This is a change in law. Disaster Management Act is a change in law.
Sure.
Okay, I think that is all we have. There's no further questions. So thank you so much. I would like to thank all of our distinguished speakers, Mrs. Vedya, Rajneesh, and Manoj, for firstly agreeing to take part in this conference and then providing such valuable insights. What actions you are taking on managing cash flows in your organization in such difficult and unpredictable times. So I'm sure inputs provided by you will go a long way in helping the industries in planning their cash flows also more effective. So thank you so much, and I think with this we can close the session now.
Thank you.
Thank you all the speakers. And I think we are all aware that it's a tough time. It's not easy to manage cash, but there are certain things which are relevant today. In today's scenario, which is like I think all of you mentioned about the CFO behavior across all departments. This is, I think, one of the best measure, which all companies can adopt, being a short-term or a long-term goal, because nobody knows the short-term and nobody knows the, time frame, across which we need to see all this. And of course, communication with your vendors and with your customer and taking along with them, that's also one of the key criteria, for managing cash, And at the end of the day, short term maybe cash and carry model, to make sure that you're not short of cash. So there are many measures. It depends on the industry where we are and where we operate. But yes, I mean, this is some of the, short term inputs from the team. And I really thank all the, speakers for being part of it and all the, moderator for being taking care of it. And all the participants, thank you so much for being part of this conference. And feel free to send your inputs, which we need to pass on to the industry minister. Next week we are having a conference also internally with a core group, coming Friday to take the inputs. And definitely, this is one of our key goal to really, really put forward all our inputs to the state government to ensure that at least we can get some more benefits from the state. Be it a credit limit or be it some other kind of let's say fixed charges. So that's all part of the game. But it will take time. But yes, we are all engaged, and that's the reason Satish ji was also good enough to be here in the conference today and support us. That yes, we are all understand the issues, and that's what he was also there. Again, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.